On November 14th, the moon will look bigger and brighter than usual. The supermoon, which is a term borrowed from astrology, occurs when the full moon comes at the same moment the moon's orbit is closest to Earth. This will be the biggest the moon has appeared since 1948, and it won't look this large again until 2034. So try not to miss it, okay? According to earthsky.org, the moon will become full precisely at 8:52 a.m. Eastern Time on November 14th. For viewers in North America, the best viewing time will probably be the night before or the night after.
President Obama is appealing to black voters to support Clinton on Election Day. In part, he says, so he can pass the baton to someone who believes in the same things he does.
You know what? I need everybody to understand that everything we've done is dependent on me being able to pass the baton to somebody who believes in the same things I believe in. And so if you really care about my presidency and what we've accomplished, then you are going to go and vote. But if we let this thing slip, and I've got a situation where my last 2 months in office are preparing for a transition to Donald Trump, whose staff people have said that their primary agenda is to have him in the first couple of weeks sit in the Oval Office and reverse every single thing that we've done.
The Republican Party of Florida already accusing election officials of engaging in voter fraud. They say it's happening in Broward County, north of Miami. It's Fort Lauderdale area. In a letter to the supervisor of elections there, Republicans claim local officials are illegally opening mail-in ballots.
Hey, Shep, yeah, this letter that the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida sent to Broward County is raising quite a storm because they've opened, and this is from the letter, tens of thousands of vote-by-mail ballots in Broward County are being opened by your staff before they have been canvassed by the county canvassing board. Canvassing is essentially verifying, and the chairman goes on to write, your office has no legal authority to open these ballots. So this is really a problem for the GOP because Broward County is 2-1 in the number of registered Democrats over Republicans, and the GOP is trying to hold the count to as firm a legal count as possible. Remember, Broward County and Palm Beach County were the epicenter of the hanging Chad issue and the vote count issues in Florida in 2000. Shep?
Shameful acts of violence. That is what President Obama called the ambush murders of 2 Iowa police officers. Sergeant Anthony Bomenio of the Des Moines Police Department and Officer Justin Martin of the Urbandale PD were assassinated last night without provocation in separate shootings. Tonight, a suspect is under arrest.
Several shots heard at 70th and Aurora, possible officer down.
It was just after 1 a.m. Responding officers found rookie officer Justin Martin shot dead in his patrol car. Authorities say more than 15 rounds were fired at him as he was driving. About 3 minutes later, and less than 2 miles away, Des Moines Police Sergeant Anthony Bomenio was shot at a stop sign. He died at a local hospital. Des Moines Police spokesman Paul Parisic.
I mean, they were ambushed. It's nothing less than a slaughter. These officers had no idea what was about to come.
By 9:25 a.m., police had 46-year-old Scott Michael Green in custody. Green had flagged down a state employee, showed him his ID, and asked him to call 911. He was arrested without incident and taken to a hospital after saying he felt sick. Police believe Green used a rifle to execute the lawmen.
I think he had full awareness of what he was doing when he killed those officers. The way that this happened isn't something that seems spur of the moment.
Green has a history of harassment. Just 2 weeks ago, he waved a Confederate flag at a high school football game. This video, shot by Green, shows police asking him to leave.
Have I committed a crime?
You're on private property, you're on school property, we're asking you to leave at this time.
Justin Martin was just 24 years old. He had only been on the Urbandale police force 1 year. 39-year-old Anthony Bominio, a father of 3, had been promoted to sergeant after more than 10 years at the Des Moines Police Department.
We don't think that these officers were specifically targeted because they were Justin Martin and Tony Bominio.
This is the only thing I know how to help.
At the crime scene in Urbandale this morning, there was a moment of gratitude for the police.
And I want you to go home to your families because I want my dad to come home to me and I want my friends to come home to me.
The number of homeless people in New York City is soaring. In fact, this week, it hit a record.
There are more homeless in New York City than ever before. On the streets, crammed into shelters everywhere. The Department of Homeless Services logged a new record high 2 days ago, up over 200 to 60,252 in 2 weeks.
It is definitely something that we cannot stand for as a city.
In an interview with CBS 2, Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito offered a number of suggestions, including an expansion of a voucher program called LINK, Living in Communities, that provides money to move families out of shelter and into permanent housing. But there's a hitch.
I think the challenges that we've seen with the current voucher program or the subsidy program in place, the LINK program, is that it's for a very short period of time and there might be some hesitancy by landlords to engage with the city on it.
And as the number of homeless has continued to set new records, the council speaker became the third official to call for changes. Last week, Controller Scott Stringer bemoaned the lack of child care at city shelters.
This is a tragedy in our city.
The week before, former council speaker Christine Quinn, who now runs a well-respected homeless program called WIN, called for appointment of a czar to oversee the creation of permanent housing. The current speaker said there's no need to create a new position.
I think we have to not keep adding layers of bureaucracy here. I think we have to really look at what we have in place.
Last week at the once-a-week session where he answers all questions, I asked the mayor about the homeless crisis. I wonder if you could address the growing chorus of people critical of your homeless policies.
Some of the biggest tools and weapons we have to address homelessness are on the way. There's a lot more coming, and we intend to turn the tide. It's going to be a long battle.
After protesting for almost 8 months, after 400 arrests and excessive force used against them, the Dakota Access Pipeline fighters may finally have a reason to celebrate. Or do they? The story had seen almost total media silence for many months, but now it has received attention at the highest level. On Tuesday, President Obama weighed in on the issue, telling Now This news outlet that there was a way to accommodate sacred lands of Native Americans and that the Army Corps of Engineers was examining whether there were ways to reroute the pipeline. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe reacted that with a statement of its chairman, Dave Archambault. We applaud President Obama's commitment to protect our sacred lands, our water, and the water of 17 million others, he said. While the Army Corps of Engineers is examining this issue, we call on the administration and the Corps to issue the immediate stop work order on the Dakota Access Pipeline. And given the flawed process that has put our drinking water in jeopardy, we also urge the administration to call for a full environmental impact study. The problem is that Obama never made these assurances. In the separate part of the interview, he in fact said government agencies will let the situation play out for several more weeks and determine whether or not this can be resolved in a way that I think is properly attentive to the traditions of First Americans, said Obama. One only has to wonder what letting the situation play out means in this case, considering how brutal things have been in the last 10 days alone.
If you operate in isolation without understanding the potential side effects, it makes sense on paper. But the most common effect of genetic engineering are surprise side effects. When we tamper with the genome in the way that they've been doing with genetic engineering in our food supply, you end up increasing allergens, toxins, new diseases, or other problems because there's massive collateral damage in the DNA. And they're using a technique to create this potato called double-stranded RNA. And in that case, they insert a very small code of RNA which reprograms or silences the gene within the potato, in this case, to allow for browning. So with this particular potato, you can slice it and it won't brown. However, scientists around the world are aware that the double-stranded RNA can also find matches in human DNA and potentially silence and reprogram our gene expression. So I certainly won't be eating this potato, and I strongly recommend that no one be used as a guinea pig, because when they do study this double-stranded RNA, they find it can have huge global effects on the DNA, as was studied 3 years ago in a research study on honeybees, where it changed the expression of over 1,400 genes in the honeybee. That's 10% of the genome, or the known genes. It changed their expression when they were given a single meal containing double-stranded RNA.
Elsewhere, Russian and Syrian officials have told rebels in Aleppo to leave the city by Friday evening. Officials say rebels will be allowed to leave unharmed and with their weapons via 2 special corridors, while civilians will be able to leave via 6 different routes. The Russians say they haven't hit Aleppo from the air for 16 days. And is there any indication as to what is likely to happen after Friday?
If you are to speak to activists on the ground, they say the Russians are picking up the rhetoric, are increasing their warnings against the rebels to leave in this 10-hour air moratorium on eastern Aleppo in preparation and anticipation for another major offensive by the regime and the Russians. But the rebels aren't buying it. They're saying that we aren't going to leave. They're going to stay in eastern Aleppo. They're going to continue the fight in districts of western Aleppo.
An audio message from Abu Bakr al-Baghdad, the leader of the Islamic State, was released by supporters of IS. The message was in response to the recent battle between US-funded Iraqi anti-IS groups and the militants over the city of Mosul. In the recording, al-Baghdad said, "This raging battle and total war and the great jihad that the State of Islam is fighting today only increases our firm belief, God willing, and our conviction that all this is a prelude to victory."
The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution has reiterated opposition to compromising with the U.S. He argues this will not help resolve any of Iran's problems. Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei noted that the U.S. itself is facing many problems at home, and it would have resolved its own if it had been able to do so. The leader made the comments in a speech on the occasion of the 1979 U.S. Embassy takeover by Iranian students. Tensions continue to soar between India and Pakistan as each side withdraws diplomats from the other. The spokesman for the Indian Ministry of External Affairs says New Delhi has recalled 6 diplomats from Pakistan and 2 others will also return home in the coming days. Vikas Swarup added that the identity of the diplomats was, quote, completely compromised after their names and photos were put in the public domain. Pakistani officials also said Islamabad has withdrawn 6 of its diplomats from New Delhi. Tensions have escalated between New Delhi and Islamabad since a major attack on an Indian army base in Kashmir in September.
No Bulgaria. No Bulgaria. Go Turkey. Immediately.
Sharia councils are a traditional way to settle family disputes and divorces within the Muslim community, but have been accused of discrimination against women, among other things. In Britain right now, they're the subject of 2 inquiries as concerns grow that they're blurring the lines within the UK's legal system.
Instead of having one law applied to each one, we have a situation where women are more or less pushed to use a certain parallel system of justice.
If they hadn't gone through the Sharia courts and got that Islamic divorce, they would have remained in what we call limping marriages, and she wouldn't feel that she Islamically was allowed to leave that marriage.
Sharia courts play a very negative role in the lives of women. We think that in content and structure it is discriminatory against women.
I feel that civil divorce should also count as an Islamic divorce.